Hey everyone, welcome to the second channel. The starter on my 66 Jeep is shot, so I need to find a replacement. Who would have thought that I could use a starter from a completely different vehicle in a much newer vehicle and it would work? Come on along and I'll show you how. For refreshers, this is the old Jeep starter. Ground teeth, the whole shaft moves forward and backwards. It's had it. Looking on the internet, these are super hard to find and they're hundreds of dollars. So that's just simply not going to work for me. However, I did find a starter on Rock Auto. So I haven't opened it up yet. Let's see what we have here. Okay. Modern box, unexpected, and very well sealed. I'll get right back to you when I get it open. I haven't opened it yet. Let's see what we got. So this starter is not a Jeep starter. It is absolutely not a Jeep starter. However, I'm happy about that. Thanks to a video by Bad Hombre Garage, I don't know this guy, but his video was super helpful. He says that this Toyota starter out of a Land Cruiser will fit the Jeep. So we're going to try that today and hopefully he's right. Let's do a quick side-by-side comparison. The Toyota starter is obviously smaller. There's less engagement area on the teeth. Man, that might be a problem, given the teeth on my flywheel aren't great, thanks to the teeth being chewed up on the starter. But the mounting looks very similar. The nose of the mount, this and this, they look super similar. And I don't care about the length and size of the starter, as long as it mounts upright. We won't use that, whatever that's for. We will use this, and we will use this to activate the starter. So my initial view is that this is going to work just fine. But the proof is in trying it, and that's what we're going to do. The clearance of the head of the bolt here is super tight. I mean, I might be able to get a wrench around that, particularly if I grind here. But what I'm going to do instead is use an Allen bolt and try to come in from here and tighten it up that way. This again is a recommendation of that YouTube video. This is the Allen screw that I'm attempting to use if you do this job. 1/2 inch by 13 by 1. I got it at Tractor Supply. I'm struggling a bit with alignment on these two mounting holes. They're very, very close. So what I'm going to try, this is the original bolt. It's like a 1/2 inch, I think. This is a next size down, 7/16. That will give me a little more movement in this starter. I'm going to actually mount the bottom one first using the smaller bolt, and I can do that because this is a pass-through bolt. It's not threaded into the block, so I'm super lucky there. And then I can just pass the bolt through the starter like that, and I have a little bit of movement to play with. So I'm going to try that next. All right, my plan of putting the bottom bolt in first is not working out too well. It's nice that it holds the starter up, but it's not giving me the clearance to start the Allen bolt. So I'm going to try an even smaller bolt down below. just to hold the starter while I get the top bolt in. I did get the bolt started in the block, but it's just too tight in here. I didn't feel good about it. It was going in really tight. It wasn't crossing, but it felt like it was. So I'm just going to open up this hole just a little bit. That should give me the clearance I need. This demonstrates the challenge I'm running into. This, on the Jeep starter, there's plenty of clearance up and down movement here. This one, there is, but it's much tighter. This is likely a metric hole. And of course, this is standard. So for this top one, I'm just going to drill it out about a 64th larger than it is. And that should do it. All right, that was easy. I did not have a drill that was a 64th larger. I had one that was a 32nd larger. So that should do it for me, for sure. But nothing like trying it to determine that. Back to the bench. I'm beginning to question if this is going to work. The problem is this collar fits in just fine. And it's very tight fit, which is fine, but it just doesn't allow this nut to get in. Apparently when I thought I had it threaded before, maybe I didn't. Because it seems like this hole has to be a lot larger. So I'm going to try to wallow it out just a little bit and see if that helps. I don't have a bit any larger than the one, well, I have bits larger, but they're too large for what I need to do here. All right. Once more into the breach. If you know what movie's that from, throw it in the comments. All right, it's in. I've got it wired up temporarily with the switch, the jump switch. And here's the moment of truth to see if this thing's going to work. Whoop, it's in gear. That would help if I did not have it in gear. But I will say that that looked good. So let me get it out of gear here and get back to you. Now I don't have the ignition hooked up or anything, so there's no chance of it firing. I don't want it to fire. I just want to test the starter, and now it is in neutral. Okay, that's not good at all. Doesn't seem to be working at all. I mean, it did for a sec, and then it quit. Maybe it's my starter button, but I don't think so. Oh boy, okay. Okay, this is super odd. I got voltage to the starter, so I know it's not a connection issue, but the starter won't do anything. It doesn't click. It doesn't attempt to move. The only possible thing I can think is that it's jammed against the flywheel. But I highly doubt that. But I'm going to have to pull it out to be sure. I don't relish doing that either. I also checked that the case itself is getting a good ground, and it is. So I'm at a loss here. I hate to take this thing out. It was so hard to get back in. I don't think it's jammed either. I'm beginning to think I have a faulty starter. All right, unfortunately, it's going to have to come out. I even tried jumping it with my JF Egwo. By the way, I love this thing. If you're looking for a small jump box, it has a lot of power. This is awesome. I'm going to have to pull it out. Man, I hate to do that. It was not easy to get in, but it appears to me the starter's defective. All right, I got it out, so let's try it. It seems to be just fine out of the vehicle, although it took a couple of presses to get that first kick in, but that could be anything. But I just don't think the gear was jammed. When I pulled the starter out, I didn't hear the gear move, and it was loose as it should be. So I hate to say it, but I'm going to try putting it in one more time. All right, starter is back in. Let's try it. Nothing again. This is not possible. You can't really see it, but we've got the red light on the switch, so I know the switch is right. So I'm going to have to do some more in-depth troubleshooting here. So I've checked twice if the starter's grounded. It is, but this time I'm going to actually hook jumpers, a ground jumper cable, right to the ground terminal here. See if that makes any difference at all. I doubt it. Oh, wait a minute. It worked. And there's a huge spark on the side of the case. I don't know what that's from. What is that spark? Check that out. Huh. Okay. I don't know what that spark is. I'm going to have to look at that. But it appears to me that I'm going to need a ground cable from that starter to a very solid ground in the car. That's the problem. Okay. That's super helpful. One other thing I did differently when I put the starter in last time was I did not use a lock washer on the top bolt. That was making the bolt much harder to get in. So if you do this job, just leave the lock washer off and you'll be able to get that Allen bolt in a lot better. All right, so this isn't finished product tied up nicely yet, but there's my ground. It's 10 gauge wire connected right to the starter bolt, the lower starter bolt. And I run that 10 gauge right up to the battery terminal. And again, I'm going to wire this neatly once I'm sure it's working, but let's try it out. I've got the starter switch hooked up. Look at that. You know, those sparks coming out of that starter are a little concerning. I'll have to check if that's normal. They're coming out of two different sides, so I suspect maybe there's a cover that's missing that should be there. But it's working. That's what I care about at this point. It's working really well. It's spinning super fast. It's not grinding. So this 80s starter from a Toyota Land Cruiser works really well. Just don't use, you gotta bring out the hole on the top about a 30-second, and don't use the lock washer. And this thing just fits right in, and use a 7/16 lower bolt, the through bolt, instead of the 1/2 inch. And this thing just goes right in, and it spins over great. So that was a ton of work and a ton of hassle, but it's done. So I'm sure there were many of you viewers screaming at the TV that it's the ground, it's the ground. But I did check that twice. The difference was the ground wasn't enough to carry hundreds of amps that a starter needs. And it did work that first time. I don't know why it worked that first time, but it did when it was in gear. But anyway, for those of you that did think it was the ground, you were right.